is going to be focused on the palliative journey. In this video, we'll cover the following topics: the fundamental psychosocial care that's necessary during palliation and end of life, how service providers can provide comfort to those that are dying, and how service providers can support loved ones who aren't able to be present at the bedside to provide comfort to the dying from afar. Talk a little bit about how service providers can facilitate that contact with loved ones at a distance, as well as how to facilitate legacy work and ritual work that really can capture making moments meaningful. And also we'll talk a little bit about some environmental tips and tricks to make death at home more peaceful and comfortable. So really what I'm hearing folks say to me that are looking for guidance is that, they really just don't know what to say. They don't know what to do to serve their patients that are nearing end of life, and the families that are supporting them, and that feeling of not knowing what to do or say is very overwhelming to them. But I really encourage you to go back to basics. If you're watching this video, it's likely that you're a service provider in the healthcare sector, and that you've had some training on the psychosocial needs of folks during crisis. So let's revisit, basic training on rapport building and communication skills. So remember the use of empathy. I'll say to patients, I imagine that I would be feeling that same way if I was you. That's such a simple but incredibly valuable way to help our patients feel immediately connected to us, and that in some way feel that we understand, that we're with them, we hear what they're saying. Be an active listener. I may respond with, yes, there is so much uncertainty in the world and in this situation. It's a very difficult time. That alone, right? You've heard them, you've validated it, you've normalized. Incredibly powerful statement. Silence. Silence is incredibly important. Allowing folks the space to sit with how they're feeling, to sit with what they're thinking, and to get them to process that, and instead of jumping in with prompts, with questions, let them just sit with that, let them process it. So use of silence can be incredibly powerful. Also, social work principles, often in our training, we talk about the appropriate use of self. And, I find this can be incredibly powerful when we show our authenticity. So for example, I may say something to a patient like, I don't take it lightly that you're choosing to share some incredibly intimate thoughts and feelings with me. I'm humbled to be here, to hear these things from you. And I may not know all the right things to say. I may not know what to do to fix it. This may not be something that can be fixed. But I'm so glad to be here with you, and I'm so glad that you feel comfortable to share. I think there's great value in you being able to do that. The other big piece I would encourage folks that are on the front line to do when they're engaging in psychosocial aspects of care in the context of this pandemic is to really take time to make a focused effort to ground yourself. I think one of the most compassionate, respectful things that we can do for our patients is to make sure that we are fully present when we are engaging with them. And no doubt, the numbers are rising. We will have huge caseloads. We will have enormous amounts of responsibility and lots of people to visit. And that makes it even more important for you to take pause every so often. For me, what that looks like is if I'm going to do a home visit or I'm about to walk into a room, I just take a couple seconds, even if it's 15, 30 seconds, I breathe. I try to clear my head. I might do, a quick meditation or a visualization. And really try to let go of all of the stressors that I might be holding. I connect with my body. What am I feeling? How am I experiencing this? And I take a deep breath and clear my mind, and then I step in. And that in itself, I know it sounds really simple, but that's a really powerful tool, something that you can do, that you have control of doing, is getting yourself in a frame of mind to fully be present and fully support the folks that you're engaging in. As with most seriously ill patients, despite their poor health, they likely have other, worries and concerns, that are apart from their illness experience. But the reality of all of those things can amplify any distress that they may be feeling in regards to their illness situation. When you're doing good psychosocial supportive care, you're looking at all of the domains of care. So, you're going to be looking at, cognitive aspects, emotional aspects, spiritual aspects, financial aspects, connection and family aspects, relationships. All of those things are important to take a look at. And also remember, and this goes back to basics as well, meeting your client where they're at. And that quite simply means, asking the patient, what's important to them? What can you do to help? Following their lead. They're the experts on their own experience, and we just need to be respectfully curious in order to figure out what those things are. Maybe as simple as saying something like, this is a really difficult time for a lot of people, and everybody is experiencing this slightly different. Can you help me to understand what's important to you? And can you help me to understand how I can help you? I really like language. I like language prompts. It helps me to remember when I think about scripts. So I'll just give you a few in the context of dealing with crisis, pandemic, end of life, and hopefully you'll find it valuable as well. So if a patient says to you, I'm scared, a wonderful, simple response would be, this is a really tough situation. I think anybody would be scared. Can you share with me a little bit more about that? It invites conversation. It validates how they're feeling. It identifies what they're feeling. And then it invites further discussion. So you're not shutting them down. And that's incredibly important. If a patient says to you, I just need some hope right now. I'm feeling hopeless. You could engage them by saying, tell me more about the things that you're hoping for. I want to understand. Again, you're acknowledging their experience and you're respectfully engaging them and asking for more information, and then you can use that to determine the best interventions. Patients say to me, does this mean that I need to say my goodbyes? And my response was, I hope that that's not the case, but I worry that we do have limited time. So, is it okay if we spend some time talking about what's most important to you, so that if time is limited, we've spent this time making it meaningful and purposeful for you. Would that be okay? If you're talking about advanced care planning, they may say to you, I want everything possible. Like, of course, I want to live. An appropriate response could be, we are doing everything that we can. The medical team is doing everything that they can, but this is a really tough situation. Maybe we can step back for a moment so I can learn more about you. What do you need me to know about you so that I can provide you with the best care possible? When we're talking about advanced care planning, I've had a spouse say to me recently, I don't think my husband would have wanted this. And I said, okay. I said, let's pause for a minute then. What do you think they would have wanted? Can you tell me a little bit about what they considered the most important thing in their life to be? What meant the most to them? What gave them meaning? Let's start there. Some other common questions that we may hear from patients and families are things like, I'm dying and my family can't come and be with me. And it was heartbreaking. But what I said to him was, I hear that this is not how you had hoped your end of life would be. But let's see how we can create some sharing time, some memories, some legacy, through phone or video chat. Would that be okay? Does that sound good? And we proceeded to go on and do some of that work. So just again, acknowledging, identifying, validating, and then supporting. Back to basics. Another family member has said to me something along the lines of, I'm really worried that my family member is going to die alone, that mom's going to be in pain and suffering, and I can't be there. And my response to her was that, that must be a really hard thing to think about, and thank you for sharing that with me. Our medical team is confident in their ability to manage pain and symptoms, and your mom will have great care. Perhaps there are ways, however, though, that we can create presence, even if you're physically distant. Can you tell me more about your mom? What's important to her? Let's start there. And that led into a really wonderful, meaningful conversation that we were able to intervene appropriately based on the things that were important to her. When you're doing sort of a lay of the land and you're going to do a visit, you're at the bedside, or you're even on a phone call doing a consult, think of the 5 senses. These are all ways to provide comfort to the dying at the bedside. So think of sound. Consider using music. So maybe this is turning on the radio, maybe it's a CD player. Sometimes there's TV stations that play music all day long. You could also utilize a smartphone, an iPod, a tablet. As a service provider, you could, even if the person is able to do so, you could engage them in making their own playlist, of favorite music. You could also integrate the use of ambient sound. So there's some white noise apps that you can find on YouTube, as well as apps that you can download, even nature sounds. So listening to the sounds of the beach, or the sounds of a beautiful sunny day with birds chirping. Sometimes that can be very soothing. It can also mitigate the sense of isolation that they feel, sort of, trapped in their house, so to speak. Use of voice is also very powerful. It could be talking, it could be singing, it could even be using an audiobook. You can also look into meditation. Different meditations. YouTube has many of them. There's also many meditation apps, and the soothing sounds of, sometimes they integrate nature or white noise or things like that, or even somebody's voice as it guides you through a meditation, so that can be really helpful also. Engaging somebody's sense of sight can be very important. Consider moving the bed, facing it toward a window, so that the person has a chance to feel the daylight, know the difference between day and night, can see birds, can see people walking their dogs, or it may be even having the bed in a communal area in the home if it's appropriate, so that they feel part of the day-to-day experience. To engage somebody's sense of sight, you certainly could put on the TV, put on a movie. Spirituality is something that's really important. You could put on the TV a church service, or you could engage with your local community partners to have a virtual chaplaincy visit that they can see. That use of technology with the video chats is big here, of course, to engage somebody's sense of sight. One of the other things that I've actually found recently really helpful for some folks, there's actually some TV stations that have it's a screen of an aquarium. And you can hear sort of the bubbling sounds of the water, and you just see all these tropical fish. It can be quite meditative and quite engaging as well. And there's also one of a fireplace with sort of the crackling noises of the fire. So those are things to explore also. Engaging somebody's sense of taste is a little trickier here, because depending on what the health status of the person that we're supporting is, they may not be able to take anything in by mouth. So if you're looking at engaging the sense of taste, I would certainly encourage you to check with the medical team. Sense of touch is really important. We know this to be true. So there certainly are some restrictions given the context that we're working in with infection control, but there's still lots of ways to stimulate somebody's sense of touch and need for touch and affection. So even providing them with a stuffed animal, even if it's an adult, I've seen time after time how comforting that can be for someone to just have something to hold on to, to cuddle. Sometimes it's even just a pillow, grabbing a pillow and cuddling it can be very comforting, or providing them with a textured blanket or pillow that they, can just stroke or feel sort of the weight of that on them. Those things can be really helpful. Weighted blankets as well, if it's appropriate. Depending on the needs of their patient, they may really appreciate either coolness or warmness. So considering like a warm cloth in the head or the neck, or, a heating pad. But definitely check with the medical team about that first. There is the possibility of still integrating touch through the PPE. So as long as somebody is, gowned up or has gloves, they could, if they've got gloves, hold somebody's hand. That they could rub somebody's hands gently or their feet gently. But again, follow the guidance of your medical team. Last sense is the sense of smell, and this is a trickier one to address as well, given the nature of the patient population that we're supporting. So we are talking about folks with COVID-19 that are having some respiratory distress, and so it may not be appropriate to engage their sense of smell. However, if you speak to the medical team and you get the go-ahead, some ideas that you could consider, like a scented candle or bringing in fresh flowers. Often they're quite aromatic. And also opening up a window. It could be as simple as opening up a window and just getting fresh air, the smell of fresh air. Those can all be really helpful. Additional things that you can do as service providers at the bedside are to help them to record a voice message or video message that can be played back to family and friends if they're able to engage in that. Spending time reminiscing, being respectfully curious, getting somebody to share stories and memories of times, of good times in their life. You can either document this type of life review, as they're dictating, you're recording in some way or videoing it, or it can just be the process of doing it itself that's therapeutic. Legacy work and life review is incredibly important. You could also do things like making handprint or fingerprint trees. That's a form of legacy. And also, if appropriate, taking some photographs. So in terms of individuals providing comfort to the dying from a distance, service providers can coach family that aren't able to be there on some things that they can do. What we know is that physical touch and presence is identified by more than 80% of palliative patients to be a crucial part of quality of life. And our task as service providers in this context is to support attachment and connection between patients and their loved ones, knowing how important it is for quality of life. So mitigating, those feelings of isolation and separation by using alternate ways of connection can restore a patient's sense of calm and peace, and also do the same thing for family members. Some useful strategies to support families to comfort their loved ones from a distance includes, and I've mentioned it many times already, but really is leveraging the use of technology. So encouraging loved ones to spread those calls, whether it be a phone call or a video call, out throughout the day. If the person that is ill is still able to engage, you could certainly do things like FaceTime or Skype or Zoom. If somebody is able to engage, one of the neat things that I'm seeing people do over video chat is holding family dinners. So even though they can't be physically present, they'll make, they'll cook the patient's favorite meal, and they have, a virtual dinner party. You can also encourage family members to put together care packages. So depending on what's allowed in the environment, they could look at, putting together something that would bring comfort to the patient in their absence, whether it's big or small things. So, fuzzy socks, a book, family photos, maybe a cherished item of some kind. Maybe it's a video message. Maybe it's a playlist, an iPod filled with their favorite songs. And then that care package can just be dropped off at the location of where the patient is. Behind the door technique. So what it is essentially is a way to help patients feel less isolated, to mitigate those feelings of isolation. And it's something that service providers can say and do with their patients. It's also something that they can coach family members to do with those patients. So if I was saying this to my mom, for example, I'd say on the phone or on video chat, okay, Mom, try to focus on your breathing as best you can. I know that's hard sometimes, but let's just try to take some nice, calm, slow breaths. Mom, see that door across the room? Just beyond that door, not too far away, that's where I am. I'm thinking about you, and I'm sending you all my love and care from just behind the door. Just behind the door, you should be able to feel it from where you are. Do you feel it? That's me. That's my love. You're not alone, Mom. I'm here. Now, Mom, I want you to remember that if you're worried or you feel lonely later, just remember, I'm just behind the door. You're not alone, Mom. I'm just behind the door. And then what service providers can do is later that night, for example, if there was some worry or some distress, they are able to say, Gail, beyond that door, everyone that you love is thinking about you and sending their love just behind that door. So just a quick tip for those that are using video chat or phone calls, and family members may say to you, I don't really know what to say. I mean, maybe it's a one-sided conversation. And some of the things that you can encourage them to consider: still reminiscing, still sharing stories, reminding them that the person can likely still hear them and that their voice is important, that familiarity can bring comfort. And maybe even perhaps having them read a book to the person, whether that's fiction or nonfiction, whether it's scriptures or a poem, song lyrics, whatever is important to that person and may bring some enjoyment. Singing songs to the person can also be really helpful. Even just telling them, all the things that they love about them, all the things that they're going to miss about them, all the things that they are going to remember about them. What I often hear people say when I'm talking about end of life and what their biggest worries are, I will have people say, I'm worried about being forgotten. And one of the greatest gifts is when family members acknowledge and say, you're not going to be forgotten. This is what we're going to do. This is how we're going to celebrate you and remember you and honor you, and helping to facilitate that really raw, open communication can be incredibly powerful and incredibly therapeutic for both parties. There's many more legacy and psychosocial support options that care providers can engage their patient with at the bedside as they're palliating, as well as encouraging family member to consider some of these options. A couple of examples are things like fabric hugs, really simple, wonderful way to create connection, doing family photographs and portraits as appropriate, using recordable voice books has been an amazing legacy project that people are finding really helpful, creating playlists. I even had a family recently do a comfort choir, and so they weren't able to be at the bedside, but they were able to be at the window. There's lots and lots of other things that you can utilize, and we'll link the list to all those things next to this video.